So my name is Joshua Scotland. I'm a lawyer at Legal Aid New South Wales in the Community Legal Education branch, and I'm here with Susanna Mihic, who is the Legal Resource Team Leader at Law Access New South Wales. Hello, Susanna.
Hello.
Before we go any further, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we're running this webinar from today, and to pay our respects to elders past and present, and also to any Aboriginal people who are listening today. Okay, and we're just going to quickly run through what we're going to be talking about today. Okay, and we've just got a clarification from our Canberra listener that works in both jurisdictions in the ACT and New South Wales. Thanks for that clarification. So today we're going to be running through what is a guided pathway. We're going to give you some examples of what a guided pathway is. We're going to be talking about other self-help tools. We're going to talk about who are they for and how to use them, because there's a few different ways that we can use them. And we're going to be emphasizing the message that that you can still see a lawyer. So this is, even though we're talking about a new technology, and we'll get into exactly what that is shortly, you're still able to see a lawyer. And we're obviously going to let you know where you can find these different tools, and I think that you'll find the examples that we show you quite useful, and will give you a clear idea of what this is all about. So the big question that some of you may be wondering is, what is a guided pathway? They're also known as interactive guides, interactive tools, user journeys, problem solvers, fixes. Susanna, what is this all about?
Essentially, all of these terms, I guess, that you've pointed out, they're all self-help tools, just a different way to call them, that aim to help individuals resolve their legal problem quickly, cheaply and fairly without having to go to court. They can guide users on their options based on their circumstances, including providing them with tailored legal and non-legal information, resources and referrals. So a guided pathway allows you to work through a problem that you have by answering a series of questions, and then provides you with tailored information based on your situation. So it's all about access to justice and giving people the tools to find answers to their legal problems on their own without having to go to a lawyer. As you mentioned, they certainly can do so if they feel like they need a little bit more support, or if they didn't get the exact answer to their question. But the aim is to try and help people who can help themselves. It can be hard with the amount of information that's online to know what type of legal problem you have, to even identify what it is, and what information out there is most relevant to you. So the guided pathways are a way of helping our clients who want to or can self-assist and identify that legal issue, and gives them the steps to take to resolve that legal issue on their own.
And is there, what's the difference between this and somebody Googling their own problem? What's the advantage of a guided pathway tool?
I guess the main problem with Googling is, you know yourself, when you look for something, a whole bunch of search results come up and you can't guarantee where those results are coming from. They may be international, they might not be specific to your jurisdiction, which is a major problem, and they might not be a trusted source or trusted website. So I guess if you go to a website like Legal Aid or Law Access or a CLC that has developed these guided pathways, you can trust that the information has been drafted by lawyers, it has been updated, it's accurate, and it's written in a way that is easy to understand.
Okay, great. And do you think these are going to be increasingly common?
We're definitely seeing an increase. I know that there are a number of international guided pathways that are already being established and being used, and it's definitely something that's creeping in more and more in Australia, we're seeing, and definitely in New South Wales. We're definitely seeing that there's more people turning to the web and wanting to find solutions on their own, rather than sitting on the phone or speaking to someone, or just being time poor, or being able to get to a lawyer or a clinic to see someone, and also being able to afford maybe a private lawyer. So this is a great alternative for those people.
And is there, I think we'll get into this a little bit later as well, but in terms of who these tools are good for, is it very much for a high capability person who's very comfortable with technology? Where are these tools best used and who for?
So I guess they sit somewhere in the middle. They're for someone who, not necessarily for someone who doesn't have the technology skills, I guess, to jump online or isn't comfortable using a computer or searching the web, and someone obviously that's literate and can understand, but also it is written in plain language, so it is targeted at people that I guess can identify legal issues, can relate to the information, and then use that to be able to answer a series of questions that relate to them and follow through, I guess, and understand the information without it being explained to them by another party.
Okay, great. We might return to who these tools are best used for a little bit later. I think it would be really helpful for our viewers to check one of these out. I'm not sure if everybody that's watching this webinar has seen one before, so we will give you an example. And we'll start off with Law Access. Which different topics have Law Access created guided pathways on so far?
So if you jump on our website, there is a link to 4 guided pathways that we currently have. Yep, just there. If you click on that green box, yep, anywhere. Yeah, once you go through the website, you'll see on the landing page there is a green box that says new guided pathways. And you should be able to just, the next one, go back. And just, yep, there it is, click now. Or just in the middle box, perhaps. It seems like that link's a bit slow to respond. There you go. So it will take you to this landing page, and you'll see we currently have 4 guided pathways. They are mortgage stress, unpaid council rates, recovering money, and resolving fencing disputes.
And I know we were just talking about this, but would you envision that a solicitor may use these as well, as well as a community worker who's working with a client?
Yeah, so I guess if a solicitor feels like they can use this tool to help their clients or guide them or bring up the information so that they can see it as they're talking them through the process, or to ask them the questions that they need to get to the next step, they can definitely use it. Same way that a community worker can use it while they're sitting with a client, or a person can use it themselves. Okay. So for example, if you have a look at the resolving fencing disputes pathway, you may want to use this if you are having a problem with your neighbour, you're having issues about sharing the cost of a fence, and you want to know how to negotiate or how to respond if your neighbour sends you a fencing notice. You can definitely have a look at this guided pathway, and it'll take you through the process.
Okay, great. So I've just clicked on that, as our viewers should be able to see. The first thing that jumps out to me is that you've got the progress bar at the top.
Yep. So they're definitely, it's not a long pathway. They're all 15-20 minutes to take you through from A to Z. The progress bar will show you how far in you are. We've got the heading at the top. There is a little accordion button on the edge, so if you want to shrink the content on the top right hand side, you can do that and it'll show you the question, or you can open it up. So if you need to know what you're going to be asked before you read that content, you can do that. You can then read through the content. There's little question marks in the content, and that basically indicates that we're defining a word to help the user understand what things are before they have to answer a question. And there are also alerts to, I guess, point to information that is highly important for them to understand. And this often relates to points where they should be getting legal advice, or where there's a time frame that they need to be mindful of.
Okay. And for any of our viewers, if you do have any questions as we go, feel free to write them in. And as I said at the beginning, we'll do our best to answer those, or we may decide to answer them at the end. So if we just take people through this one, who wants to do the fencing work? Let's say that it's me, that I'm the one that wants to do it. And then, yeah, I can see once again, we've got all that content, which is giving me information. And I guess I like the amount of white space that there is.
So we try to use a number of tools to try and keep the information simple, easy to understand. A lot of people like to skim information, but we use bullet points, white space, headings, steps, and there are links to further resources if people want to do some more reading.
Okay, and it goes through all 6 steps. Okay, and then there's information on each of those above steps. And if I said that I'm ready to send a fencing notice, I've done all of the previous steps, I could click on that one.
Yeah. So it just saves you having to read pages and pages of content that aren't relevant. Like you said, if you're at the stage where you're ready to do that, you've tried to speak to your neighbour or you've located the owner of the property and you're ready to do the next step, which is setting, but you've basically skipped, 4 steps that you don't need to read, and the information is tailored to where you are in that point in time.
And let's say that I have, it's been more than a month, so that required time period has been satisfied. And I'm now ready to make an application for a fencing order.
Yeah. So it's giving them key indicators about things that they need to do. You may be ready to send a fencing notice, you need to wait the 1 month, and then you need to do something else, which is make an application. Throughout the pathways, we're trying to obviously encourage our users and clients to negotiate where they can, talk to their neighbours, mediate. As we all know, this will save them time, money, stress.
Yeah. I like the practical nature of it. Okay, and then this is where it would link me for more information on how to file the application. It would go to the Law Access page about that.
Yeah, so we've taken the critical information, the must-know information, and the nice-to-knows we've left to the other resources. We find that users generally don't want to deviate from this page. They might get lost in reading more information. So we've put that in there if they have time or they feel like they want to read some more. But if they don't necessarily click on the link, everything they need to know that's essential is on this page.
And then to make that decision about whether I file the application in the local court or at NCAT, I would click to this website and read that information and then make a decision.
So again, it's just letting them know that they have an option. If they feel that they've got enough information or they just want to go and do the application, they can. If they want to read a little bit more about what then happens after they file their application, the next step will lead them to more information. So in this situation, you click no, you feel like you're ready, you don't need any more information about preparing for NCAT or presenting at NCAT, and then we end the pathway by giving you some referral options. So if you want to speak to someone or you feel like you need that assistance of a lawyer and it's all too much, there's contact details there.
Yeah, wow. Okay, and then I can see down the bottom that it looks like, because these are relatively new, you're very much still in that user testing and making sure that these are useful for people and trying to get feedback. And the other thing that you've got is, what other topics do you think would be useful to have guided pathways on? So at the end of our webinar, we are interested from the people watching to see what you guys are interested in as well, and what topics would be useful for you to assist your clients with. And we'll talk a little bit more about what kind of legal issue is well suited to a guided pathway. Okay, and then I'm now going to show you a guided pathway which is not from Law Access. It's from a community legal centre called Financial Rights Legal Centre, and I'm just going to bring that up now. That's one that I've actually used a lot when I'm giving advice downstairs after a motor vehicle accident, and I find it to be really useful, and I think clients find it to be really useful as well. Okay, so this one is called the Motor Vehicle Accident Problem Solver. So we will send you a link to this afterwards. I'm not sure, some of you may have used this one before as well. But it's that same idea of what Susanna's been talking about, of there's a few simple questions that you ask the user answers those questions, and then you get some tailored information about what options you can take, and kind of often it may even give you the tailored information. So it'll be the pros and cons of those different, taking those particular different steps. So with this one, if I just quickly take you through it, I've had an accident, I've had a motor vehicle accident, I'm being pursued by an insurance company. I've had an accident, I'm being pursued by the other party. I've had an accident, nothing has happened yet, but I need advice. I have a question about my insurance. And I'll choose the option that seems to happen quite often, unfortunately. I've had an accident, I'm being chased for money to pay for the damage. And we'll say that I agree I'm at fault. And then they give you this tailored information. So basically just saying that you are liable for the damage, and that you will need to pay the reasonable cost of repairing the damage to the other car and any losses suffered by the other driver, and that you need to act promptly, and it kind of sets out what will happen next. And then the key point at the end, are you insured? And let's just say that I am insured. And then it goes through the different options from there. So let's say that you don't agree with the amount that's been claimed against you. And then it gives you some information about what you can do in that situation. And then you can choose at the end, and then it's got the kind of the useful tips. The other party's insurance company may be obligated under their contract of insurance to their insured to pay more than what they may be entitled to recover at common law. For example, the insurer may have an agreed value policy for more than the market value. The insurer cannot recover this amount from you. They can only recover the market value or the reasonable repair cost from you, whichever is the lesser. Then I click on this one. I've received a letter of demand, but not an itemized invoice of damages claimed. So you can see that these tools go into quite a bit of detail, and that but I would also say at the same time that they keep it quite simple, and that if you're going through this process, to be able to mine through the internet and find all of this relevant information would be horrifically time consuming. And to have these tools which really set out the kind of limited variables that can happen in a given legal problem and explain to you at each step of those variables what your options are, and gives you the relevant information so that you can make decisions. I see it as quite an empowering tool for people in our community to resolve their own legal issues, to avoid needing to see a lawyer potentially, while still having the option to see a lawyer if at the end of the guided pathway that's the recommendation with your particular situation. It would make sense for you to see a solicitor. Is there anything that you'd add to that, Susanna?
No, just definitely that the feedback that we're getting is that people do like these tools. They like being able to self-help, and they feel quite, I guess, like you said, self-empowered to be able to do that themselves without the help of a lawyer.
Okay, great. So we're going to return to that question that I talked about a little bit earlier, which is who are these for? And Susanna, what type of client, and I know that you talked about this a little bit before, but what type of client do you see these tools working well for?
So definitely for someone who has a level of comfort with technology, like I mentioned before, a person who's able or comfortable reading and filling in forms and following some written instructions, and a person who has a low complexity matter or what appears to be a straightforward matter. Obviously, like we've stressed from the beginning of this webinar, if something gets complex or they're not sure what to do next, they should definitely see a lawyer. These self-help tools won't help people who have trouble with technology or literacy, because as you've seen, you need to be able to navigate a little bit, and you need to be able to, I guess, read and absorb quite a bit of text to be able to identify where you are and what you need to do next. And they're not necessarily good for people with a complex legal situation.
Okay. And I guess that's for people who are using it as a self-help tool. There's also different ways that we can use them. Are you able to talk to us a little bit about the different ways that people can use these guided pathway tools?
Yeah, so we think there are a lot of different ways that these tools can be used. For people listening today, if your client is quite confident with computers and has a high level of literacy, then it might be appropriate for you to refer them to use these guided pathways themselves to resolve their legal issue. Or if you believe your client may not be able to use the pathway tool by themselves, you could use it with them and assist them through the process. If you speak to a client and identify that they have a legal issue, then it may be good for that person to be able to have a look at the guided pathway before they meet with you. So then you can focus on any questions that come up at your meeting.
Okay. And I know it's kind of early days, how long have these tools been online at Law Access for?
We've been doing online tools for many, many years. Originally, the tools that we had online were called interactive guides, or A to J's, and they were on a number of topics that we have on our website. So they kind of supported them in a different format. But these types of tools, these guided pathways, are something new, and they've been online probably for about 12 months now.
And is one thing that I wanted to mention before is with the motor vehicle accident problem solver, that at the end of that tool, if you wanted to pursue another party for damage to your vehicle, it will give you a template letter at the end. Is that something that the Law Access guided pathways provide as well?
Not at this moment. At the moment, if you need to write a letter, we will link you to the resources that we have on the Law Access website in our Representing Yourself topics. But we are hoping that down the track, we will be able to utilize some different technology that will allow us to have letter generators and things like that.
Yeah, okay, great. And despite these being relatively recent, have you received feedback from any community workers who have used these with their clients? And had any response about, okay, this was kind of a complex legal issue, but I had really good rapport with the client, but it was, and you have a guided pathway topic on it, I was able to take them through it, and by the end of going through the guided pathway topic, we were able to kind of resolve this legal issue together?
We haven't directly had any feedback from community workers, so we would love to hear from anyone that does use them or speaks to clients that use them to see what works, what doesn't work, if they have any ideas on what might work different or topics that they need to be able to assist their clients. But overall, we have had feedback that these guided pathways are very popular for people, like I said, that can't necessarily get to see a lawyer or get through to a phone service or to a clinic, and that doesn't mean that they don't need those services. It's definitely to be used in conjunction for those. So if they get through the pathway and they feel like they need to clarify something, they can contact legal aid or call Law Access or pop in and see a lawyer. But we definitely are hearing that they feel satisfied that they can resolve their problem on their own.
Okay. And in terms of, just to find out a little bit more about our audience, we're just going to launch a quick poll. Have you ever used a guided pathway or self-help tool to solve a legal problem for yourself or a client? So that we're just collecting the responses from our listeners. We've got a quarter of people have voted so far. Hopefully that's popped up on your screens. And so far we've got 100% of people have not used a guided pathway or self-help tool. So that's good. You're in the right place to find out more about these tools and find out more about what I would say is kind of going to be an increasingly big part of the legal assistance sector as the technology gets better and better, that we're able to provide these tools to help people resolve their own legal issues and using plain language, and have this be quite an empowering part of the legal assistance sector to people in our community so they can resolve their own legal issues. And that's interesting. So of our results, we had, 100% of people had not used one of these tools so far. So I'll close that poll. Thank you for answering that. Okay. And we've got, I might jump straight into another poll question. And this question is, guided pathway legal tools work well when? And we've got the options of your client is capable of using technology to problem solve, your client has someone who can assist them, your client is illiterate and has limited support, your client has complex needs and multiple legal problems. And I believe that you can answer multiple. And this is the joy of the interactive webinar, that we can do these polls. So hopefully that's great. And the results coming back in, and I'm sure our viewers will be relieved to know that they are doing quite well with this survey, with this poll. And I guess the thing that we really want to emphasize with this survey is that there's a number of different ways when these guided pathway tools can work well. And that ranges from, as Susanna has been talking about, when somebody is quite capable and is comfortable using technology, that they can use that by themselves, ranging from somebody who may be computer illiterate but has a caseworker that they have a really good connection with, and the caseworker is able to take them through this guided pathway and they're able to resolve the legal issue by themselves. And the client is illiterate and has limited support, you know, that really is a situation where somebody should be seeing a lawyer or getting advice, maybe directly from a lawyer, because in that situation where they don't have the support of a caseworker or a community worker, you know, that might be the best option for them. And where there's complex needs and multiple legal problems, potentially it's a bit overwhelming to try to resolve all of these without somebody there that can really take you through it. And, you know, potentially that could be a community worker. What's your view, Susanna, where somebody has complex needs?
It could be a good starting point. The community worker could definitely help them identify, like that question says, where there's multiple legal issues, and maybe guide them towards which one is a priority and should be dealt with first. Yeah,
and I guess that's one thing that at the moment we don't have, that if you have multiple legal issues, that these self-help tools, these guided pathways, are not going to assist you to identify this one's the most important. They're not going to assist you to triage. This one could result in me losing my home. This one they're not going to help you make those judgment calls at this stage. It's just advice on how to resolve distinct legal issues. Is that something that you would see coming in the future, Susanna, of a tool that would actually be able to help people decide which one is the biggest, most important pressing legal issue that they should resolve first?
It would be great to be able to have something like that. We definitely need the technology that would be able to support that. But generally, we find that people that have a legal problem generally have many legal problems or many problems, not necessarily legal problems. And that might be a debt, which then requires financial assistance, which requires, a number of other services to help. So if we could develop a tool that can identify those multiple legal issues and then direct them in the right way, that would be great. But for now, like you said, they are very distinct. So they need to be able to at least get support or self-identify what the legal issue is to decide what legal pathway or guided pathway they're going to use.
Okay. And we're just going to move along to this point that we've kind of been trying to emphasize the whole way through, that you can still see a lawyer if needed. What free legal help is still available?
Of course, definitely these tools, like we said, can be used together with a lawyer, or for someone who has higher capability, it may remove the need for them to see a lawyer altogether.
And that's a good thing. The next topic that we have is just where do I find them, and hopefully people watching are aware of these two websites, which I put up on the screen.
So you can access our guided pathways by going to our website, www.lawaccess.nsw.gov.au, and as you saw on the homepage, there is a link to the guided pathways. The guided pathways are also mobile friendly, so you can use them anytime, anywhere. And once you get the guided pathways page, you can choose which guided pathways you want to use. If you need information about a car accident, you can go to the financial rights website that Josh has up, which is www.financialrights.org.au, and click on the link from their homepage, or alternatively, you can go straight to wba.financialrights.org.au.
Okay, great. And we might move to our final poll. And I'm just going to launch it. After this webinar, do you think you will use guided pathways to help your clients? We've got yes, no, very binary. So we've put in the third option, maybe. Okay. And we've got 40% of people have voted. We've got a yes and maybe. Yeah, and for everybody that's listening, if I could just ask, I know we're both very interested in what kind of legal topics you think would work well as a guided pathway. As we've kind of been talking about, we want kind of legal issues where there's not too many variables. What kind of legal topics do you think work well, Susanna, for a guided pathway?
I guess the ones that we've focused on primarily. So debt matters, where someone is either trying to recover money and where they're being maybe chased for money. People that have fines issues and need to know how to pay a fine or elect to take it to court, or people that have maybe are struggling to pay some utilities. We've got pathways about how to pay or negotiate unpaid council rates, things that they can deal with themselves with the other party. So like I said, debts where they can maybe negotiate a payment or a payment by installments, or they have an issue with a neighbour about things like fences or noise, something that they can potentially resolve without going to court.
Yeah, okay. And there's also another one that I'll just mention because our viewers might be interested, which is Moonee Valley Legal Service developed one called Fine Fixer. So I might let you look that up in your own time, but that's that's one which is obviously addresses, you know, you've got to find how do you fix that, and that's that same idea of it asks you a series of questions and it gives you your options of how you can resolve that fine issue.
In Victoria.
In Victoria. So yeah, I can see that you've got the 4 here. Is Law Access thinking about making any more guided pathway tools in the future?
Yeah, so we are currently working on 2 more guided pathways. One of those is the opposite of recovering money, and that is the being chased for money, which is definitely going to be useful for the many clients that we see that have problems with their debts. And the other one is unpaid utilities. So people that are struggling with unpaid phone bills, electricity bills, gas bills, things like that.
And how do you decide which topics that you will create guided pathways for, Susanna?
So generally we look at the number of inquiries we're getting through our call centre, and we look at the statistics on the legal problems that people are having out there and what they're inquiring about, and what our information officers are generally referring them to, so other resources. We speak to our stakeholders and see what kind of issues and trends they're seeing in their clinics and advice sessions. And then we will work together to try and think about what's the one that's going to be most useful for the most amount of clients out there.
Yeah, great. And if any of our viewers are able to type in any topics that they think would be good into the question box, we'd be very interested. So please feel free. Otherwise, after this webinar, we will send through an email which will have a way that you can contact us. That'll be our email address, but I can forward that on to Susanna, any suggestions you have, and I'm sure that will be taken into account.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so we're just going to do a quick recap and then we will finish up. So yes, Law Access New South Wales has new guided pathway tools that you can use with your clients, and we've talked about what those topics are. There's different ways that you can use them. So if you've got a client that's quite vulnerable or is experiencing disadvantage and has complex needs, you know, you may still be able to use it with one particular issue. Maybe you want to refer them to a lawyer as well to get an idea of which one is the most important. If you've got a client that's just got one legal issue, you know, this could be a great way for a community worker to resolve that issue with their client, and that you can still get free legal help. So that's, and there's our email address on that final page with cle@legalaid.newsouthwales.gov.au. So if you do come up with any ideas for a legal topic that would be well suited for a guided pathway, maybe something that a legal problem that a lot of your clients are having, that would be really helpful. And if you can include in your email that you send through just how often the issue is coming up, that would be really helpful as well. Susanna, did you have any last words?
No, that's it. I just encourage you to have a play with the guided pathways, so that you can assist your clients quickly when you are meeting with them. Have a click through, have a look at the features, and if you have any questions, like Josh said, feel free to reach out.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us, Susanna. It's been wonderful. In about an hour, you will receive an email with links to all the resources we've discussed during the webinar today. And we will stay online for about another 10 minutes or so. So if you wanted to send through any questions, we're more than happy to try and answer those. Otherwise, feel free to leave the webinar and enjoy the rest of your days. Thank you for joining us.